Well, welcome to another episode of the S.E.M podcast. Today we're joined by Adam Rollo, and it's Jack and Zach hosting you again. Welcome, Adam.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Where are you calling from this evening?
Calling from my home office in Layton, Utah.
Right, all the way from Layton.
All the way, yeah.
Layton.
Good deal, man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think you're probably familiar with our format. We talk about, leading up to the mission, if there's any story there, and then we jump over and we want to know what you've been up to since you got back, and then we'll go back and reminisce. So start us out with how you ended up in Scotland.
So funny how I ended up there. Not real funny, but like most people, growing up in the church, always had a desire to serve. I thought I did, and had some older brothers that served missions. And I thought, man, if they can do it, I can do it. And so, I graduated from high school in 2003 in June. And, the mission was kind of the next step. So I've been prepping for it and put the papers in. My dad was actually in the stake presidency at the time. And so that made the process a little easier, a little quicker. And I got the inside scoop of when things were going to come on and when things were going to come through the mail. So I put in my papers, and I think I got my call in August. And let's see. Yeah, the day I got the call, there was some sort of activity at church, and it was out on the lake. And so I was up playing out on the lake, and I think we're on a tube. And I remember taking a few spills, and I might have been slightly concussed during the opening of the call, and I was a little late. I was with a friend, and she was driving, and so we left the dam. We came back to my house, and the place was packed with friends and family and all kinds of people, and uncles and aunts and cousins, and it's a big reveal in the front room. Open up the call, and sure enough, it was Edinburgh, Scotland. And it's funny enough, I had one of my cousin's husbands was there, and he says, "It's pronounced Edinburgh." And I said, "Oh, okay."
Corrected
Awesome.
right away.
Yeah. So I learned the ways of Edinburgh pretty quick. But funny enough, when I was in my senior year of school, I had a country report that I had to do on business, and the country I selected was Scotland. And
wow,
I'd done all this research on how to conduct business in Scotland, and so it was kind of cool that I opened that up. And my dad, he served in England, so
cool.
He was pretty stoked for me to go there, and yeah, good little connection there. So opened the call, and I think I flew to the MTC on like November 11th. Just a couple months later.
Great.
Yeah.
All right.
So November of 03, right?
Yeah, November of 03.
Okay.
Yeah,
Nice.
I remember getting on the airplane because I didn't have to go to the Provo MTC, which was a new experience in my family. Everybody just went to the Provo MTC, and that was awesome in a way. I didn't have to do the Provo MTC, so I was just basically got dropped off at the airport, and I was feeling kind of lonely after going through security and turned the corner, and there's Elder Bradley. He was flying out with me all the way to Manchester. So yeah, it was fun. Fun memory.
All right. So I guess November 2005, head back home. What you been up to in the last nearly 20 years?
Let's see. Holy cow. It has been 20 years, hasn't it?
Close.
That's wild. I got home in November and started going to school in January. Started that fall, but winter semester at Weber State. That's where I met my wife. I got a bachelor's degree in business. We married back in 2009 and been together, 14 years now. and have 5 children, all boys. We just had our we just had our 5th back in May.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
That's
so it's
awesome.
been.
So what ages you got?
So we start. My oldest is 9. He'll be 10 here in a couple weeks. So next week, actually, and then we'll go 10. So 9, 7, 4, 2, and newborn.
Wow, man.
Yeah,
That's a busy household.
it's
No wonder
extremely busy.
No wonder it's been hard to track you down.
Yeah. That among other things, it's been a wild year actually for us. So it's been fun, but very busy. Hard to squeeze out some time.
That's cool.
Yeah. So yeah, then I've worked in a few. Let's see, work's been kind of interesting. So I started out at a large defense contractor. Well, I graduated during the Great Recession, which was awful. I remember doing interviews and getting beat out by people with MBAs for entry-level positions. It was awful. And finally found something at one of the defense contractors here in Salt Lake, and I was there for about 8 years. We got a master's degree, and then went to another company that was in the aerospace industry, and then just back in February, I left that company and started a new position with a aerospace manufacturer. So I've been there for about 4 months now. 5 months now, still trying to get my hands wrapped around everything. But yeah, it's been exciting. It's been good.
Not allowed to say the name?
I'd rather not.
Okay. Maybe we have to recut. I want to
Yeah.
know who it is. I'm in the industry, so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Bryce, man, I gotta apologize for the first few podcasts that I watched. I did not know who you were.
You're like, who is this guy with the beard?
Yeah, I remembered Elder Bryce. I was like, I know the name, but the hair and the beard threw me so far off.
Yeah.
It's like,
and no glasses. I went through some major changes.
Yeah. Major changes.
Yep.
Yeah, I went through. I was looking at pictures. I was like, man, I cannot pin this guy for like 3 or. I was like, he must have just been young, and that's how Zach knows him.
That's hilarious, man.
Yeah.
All right. So you've been working. Anything else you've been up to?
No, just raising kids, trying to have some fun where I can.
That's a full-time deal right there. 5 kids.
Yeah.
Man, that's great. Okay. Well, we'll go back to November 2003. Start at the MTC. Just walk us through areas, companions. It's whatever you want to talk about. This time is yours, really.
Right. Yeah. Feel free to jump in, and if you guys have members too. I'm trying to think. So I started in November. Yeah, I remember getting on the airplane with there were probably 20 missionaries flying to Chicago to get connecting flights. So I turned a corner and I saw Elder Bradley, and that was such a relief. I think we even hugged each other because we were both, from little towns in Utah and headed out to Scotland of all places. And, we found more missionaries along the way, and that was kind of fun as we walked through the airport and finally got to our terminal and jumped on the flight and headed to Chicago. And once we got to Chicago, it was like we landed and hooked up with a whole bunch more missionaries. Not all of them were going to Manchester, but going to different places. So it was kind of cool to have that kind of that commonality, even though we were all strangers. We all were pretty excited about what we were headed to, and got to the Manchester MTC or Preston MTC, wherever it was. And that was a cool experience. We were there with, when I arrived, it was Elder Manini and Cottrell and Tovey. And then I'm trying to remember if there's any other Scottish missionaries in that one. No, I think it's just the 5 of us. And then, a whole bunch of other missionaries that we spent 3 weeks with. And I remember feeling like, it was November, so it wasn't the prettiest of times there in England, but it's pretty awesome experience to be in such close quarters to the temple, and then to be constantly studying the gospel and learning how to teach and building our testimonies, and learning the administration side of the church a little bit, and how to run things once we got out in the field. And man, it was quite a spiritually filling experience. And then, of course, I remember just having to, pry my eyes open just to stay awake. I don't know what it was about the MTC, but I was
Time change, and then sitting and eating.
Yeah. Sitting, eating.
It's a recipe for sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. So I remember that pretty well. I remember the food not being great, but it wasn't terrible. It was typical English food, but it wasn't anything like the pro MTC was. The stories I heard there, the fountains of ice cream, and
no Lucky Charms in Preston.
No marshmallow mateys at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, the MTC was great. There were a couple missionaries that didn't go to England that I kept in touch, or didn't go to Scotland that were going to England. I kept in touch with them for a little while. Had some good friendships there. But my companion was Elder Manini, and I remember my first impression was, hey, this guy doesn't speak English, like at all.
At all.
And,
yeah.
And I remember talking to him, and he just kind of nodded his head. And I was like, he's not getting any of this. We have no idea what we're doing. And he kind of came out of his shell a little bit. And he had his guitar with him, and it was fun to work through that. Him not really speaking English that well, but I feel like by the end we were pretty good friends, and we could understand each other, and got to teach the gospel to some people on those excursions that we take to
That's
practice.
Not bad at all for 3 weeks.
No, not bad at all. It was pretty cool. Cool to see how the Spirit kind of worked that out for us. So that was fun. And then we jump on the train and head up to Edinburgh. And I don't remember much about that train, but I remember going to the mission home, and getting pictures taken and running through all the administration stuff. Seemed kind of busy, and we took the tour with the assistants around Edinburgh. Good old disgrace, and remembering all the sights, and then up to, I can't remember, did we do Pratt's Hill that same day, or maybe we just went out with other missionaries? I think we went out and did some tracking with some other missionaries, did some street contacting, and I remember I got paired up with this elder. I'm struggling with his name, but he was Canadian. And I just remember he was like wearing skate shoes, and like they were black suede skate shoes, but they were skate shoes a lot more comfortable than the crappy shoes that I bought to go on a mission with. That there was an Elder Olson that my mom had contacted somehow, and he was still in the mission field, but she was asking her about recommendations for shoes and things like that, and they were like, yeah, you got to get these one shoes. I can't remember what they were, but they were the most uncomfortable shoes ever. And I remember, and they were supposed to be like super waterproof and super durable and nice looking, but they were just so uncomfortable. And I remember I wore them out tracking that night, and they ripped my feet apart. And I don't think I wore them for the rest of the mission. They were so bad.
Oh man.
But I remember going out and street contacting in Edinburgh, and then we came back and I think we had dinner. And then we got paired up with our companions the next day, I think. And my trainer was Elder Newcomb, Luke Newcomb from Australia. And he was the perfect trainer for me because he was older, and I was I was pretty young. I mean, I know I was 19, but I had no idea about anything. And he was a real straightforward guy, really, really kind, really patient for the most part. But then he knew how to have fun and poke fun at me a little bit, like an older brother. And I think we must have spent, we spent ages together. It seemed like I think I was down in Sri Lanka for like 4.5 months. So we must have been together for 3 of those 2 moves. And so I was down there in Stranraer with Elder and Sister Cole as well. I mean, they've passed. They were wonderful souls. Did a lot of good for that branch down there in Stranraer. Did a lot of good for a lot of missionaries too.
Yeah,
they were
Their names
wonderfully
mentioned quite a few times for those who down in that area for sure.
Yeah, they were gems for sure. That would have been a tough area to be just two missionaries, because there's the ward politics or the branch politics and things like that get kind of hairy. But Elder Cole always had a cool head and so much love, and Sister Cole was very straightforward and wasn't afraid to tell people how things should be, including the missionaries, trying to set us right, making sure we're doing what's right and what's good. They'd feed us every once in a while. And they were awesome. Actually, I ended up going to school with one of their grandsons. I'm trying to remember his name, but we made that connection at some point in one of our classes. So yeah, small world. So let's see. I was there with Newcomb for 3 months, and that was a great opportunity. I remember the first night we went out knocking doors, and this is how naive I was. I remember knocking. It must have been the first door, or just the first one I remember, because it left such an impression on me. But he did a few doors, right? It's like, okay, this is the kinds of things you do, and we hadn't taught a lesson yet. He's like, okay, now this is your door. And it's like, okay, I guess I'll try. And I remember knocking on the door and just being so nervous, holy cow. And door pops open and introduce ourselves. We're missionaries from the church. Everything they tell you not to say, I think that's exactly, went down that script, right? Oh, we're missionaries from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Do you believe in Jesus Christ? And the lady says, no. I had nothing. What do you say to that?
just
I kind of
brought your script in the face right there.
yeah. I remember doing the junior companion look. I looked over to my companion like, hey, bail me out here. And Newcomb just wouldn't do anything. And I remember just struggling through trying to have a conversation on this doorstep. And the accent down there was so thick and it's so new to me that I just, eventually the door closed and we walked away. And I just remember it, it was a rainy night. And I know President Vreens told all the trainers to make sure we were chapping in the rain that day. And, the first night we were there. And, it was a good thing for us, to get our feet wet. But I don't know that we chapped many more doors after that. And we went back in. And, oh, man, I just remember laying in bed that night thinking, oh, my gosh, what am I doing here? These people don't even believe in Jesus? Like, what the heck? I don't think I'd necessarily even come across a person that hadn't believed in Jesus in one form or another. You know what I mean? So growing up in Ogden, Utah, just something that I missed growing up. So learned quick. So yeah, it was a great experience with Elder Newcomb, and we parted ways after 3 months or so. It might have been 4.5. It was a long time. We were together down in Sherman. And we didn't have a whole lot of, it's not like we were baptizing people left and right, but it was a good companionship. And, I guess he'd had a hard companion before or something like that. So he was eager to have a new companion so that he could do the work the way he wanted to. So that ended up working out really well. And then my next companion in Stranraer was Elder Newman. Carl Newman. He was, yeah. I don't know if he's been on.
Not yet.
Not yet. You got to get him on here.
We'll get him.
He's got stories, man. Yeah, he's such a good guy.
We've heard his stories through his companions, and
Good.
yes, we would love to have his side of that for sure.
Yeah, he's got to come defend some of those stories, I'm sure. But he was awesome, and a great soccer player, and just great people. Kind of a magnet for people, and so that was. I think we're only together for one transfer, but I think we baptized a kid or like a teenager in that short time that we've been teaching, or it's a brother of a member or something like that. So it was a cool experience. We actually baptized him in the bay there, right in front of Shinrar. So that was pretty neat.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah, I think that's right. So then after, Newman and I remember we started playing soccer, and we'd get or football, and we'd start getting the local boys out and their friends, and we try to play more football because there wasn't much going on in Shinrar. So if anybody was doing anything, everybody heard about it. And so when we started playing soccer and things, I feel like we'd get less abuse on the doors and more questions, and that was a good experience to kind of see, and really kind of brought the ward together, and that was great. It was great to be down to Shinrar, even as remote as it was. We didn't go to district meetings or anything like that because it was so far away and such a hassle to get up places. We did have a car though, which was awesome, and so we got to see. I've got some beautiful pictures from driving back and forth to teaching appointments and visiting members, and the members in Shinrar were awesome too. I remember the McLean family and the McRobb family and Fiona, and I can't remember her husband's name. He was the branch president. But great people who fed us great food, and really helped us immerse ourselves in the Scottish culture. The McLean family was really cool. They lived out on a farm and had like 20 little Scottish terriers running around this farm. And whenever the missionaries showed up, they'd feed us. And this is great. The memories. So we'd go in, and they had this. We lived in this little farmhouse, and Sister McLean would open the windows during the day. It didn't matter how cold or warm it was. She'd open the windows, and so it was freezing cold. But as soon as we got there, and they'd start making stuff, making food or getting it ready, she'd close the windows and throw wood on the fire. So it just warm up really nice. And we've been chapping all day because that's all we did. We didn't even street contact because there wasn't a street to contact on. So we'd be knocking doors all day. We're frozen. And I remember one day they brought out this huge bowl of chili. And growing up, I didn't really like chili that much. But it was like this big bowl of chili over rice. And like all these dogs would come into the room, and they'd jump on the couch and like nuzzle in next to you and like cuddle up next to you. And it just got so warm. And I'm pretty sure both Newcomb and I fell asleep on the couch for a solid half hour at least. And
Nice.
brother and Sister McLean didn't even bat an eye at it. It was just fine. Like I think they probably like cleaned up and then came back. And then I think I woke up and felt pretty embarrassed. And then I was elbowing Newcomb, and he woke up and he's like, well, we should probably share something. So yeah, I remember that. They're an awesome family, taught us some valuable lessons. And Brother McLean, I remember being in a shop with him once, or maybe he was with Elder Cole or something like that. And the newspapers of how they were over there with the page twos and whatever. And I remember feeling uncomfortable, like just walking into any any store whatsoever. But then I remember being in there with Brother McLean, and he grabbed the top paper and flipped it over, And he said, we've already repented of that. We don't need to do that again, kind of thing. And that's a great lesson to learn, you know? We don't have to subject ourselves to this. It was great. So cool people. It's culture shocks. Yeah. In Stranraer. See, I got 1,000 stories of Stranraer, I'm sure. But after Stranraer, Newman and I got whitewashed out, and I went to Hamilton and was companions with the infamous Terrence Malloy.
There you go.
He's
Oh my
famous.
God.
He's famous.
He is famous, you know. And, you know, honestly, I wish I would have kept better in touch with all my companions, you know. But Malloy was a unique individual, and I'm sure he still is. He's awesome.
That was a pretty young companionship then.
Yeah, we were young. In fact, his trainer was Elder Olson, who told me to get these crappy shoes. And so we had that in common. And so he was with Olson. Olson was a pretty cool guy from what I understand. I don't think we ever crossed paths more than half a second. But I was in Hamilton with Elder Malloy for at least 6 weeks. It might have been 3 months, but it was a lot of fun. Young companionship, so we're just kind of figuring things out. And I think at some point we threw out the area book. Remember those area books that they'd have? Cleaned that sucker out. You know, dinner appointments with what's her name?
Winifred Terrett.
Winifred, yes. So Hamilton was, Hamilton was great.
So good.
Winifred was awesome, and I remember having some great discussions with Winifred and her in her rose cottage that was built in 1592 or whatever it was, and you know, she was awesome. I remember, you know, dinner appointments with her. In fact, Terrence Malloy made the best chicken carbonara or just carbonara, a carbonara dish that I was like blown away by. Like here's Elder Malloy telling me stories about how he trained for football by chasing rabbits, and he'd actually catch them, and then he busts out this delicious Italian cuisine. I was just blown away. But
he didn't mention that. That's pretty cool.
yeah. So funny. Yeah, I never expected that. You know, he's the kind of guy that would eat, you know, whatever. But then he, for Winifred, he made this special meal. And, yeah, she raved about it. And, I remember having a good conversation with Winifred actually about the word of wisdom. She's like, "Oh, it's so silly. Like this, you know, it's just tea." And I remember going over to her sink, and it was like stained yellow. We're like, "What more evidence do you need, Winifred?" She's like, you got a really good point there. It's pretty funny. Yeah, I remember doing the dishes in her sink and thinking, yep, there's something to the word of wisdom.
It's very true. Very true.
But yeah, the Hamilton ward was awesome. It was obviously a bigger ward, and I feel like I got a better feel for, you know, regular missionary life because we were part of a district, and, you know, I'd been in Stranraer for so long. But Hamilton had a full ward and a building, and, you know, it was really cool. Like Brother Bishop Cameron, I believe it was at the time. Yep. And there was a big family with a bunch of boys in it. I can't remember their names. The Works. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. The Works were great. And the oldest boy had gone to like EFY or something. And I was learning more about the Scottish culture, but also learning how much of a bubble I'd lived in for so long. And I remember him coming back and sharing stories about, you know, people do some weird things in Utah. And I was like what? What are you talking about? He said, well, I was there and it rained. He's like, big deal. It rained. I was like, well, it's the middle of summer. So, I mean, rain in the middle of summer is a good thing. And he's like, okay, I get that. But he's like, in the prayers, they kept praying about moisture. And I thought, moisture. You're right. We do say that a lot. And so ever since then, every single time I hear that in a prayer, I just shake my head like, why are we praying for moisture? What is this? Thank you for the moisture, or please grant us moisture, or whatever it is. So funny. It's like, he's like, it's precipitation. Call it precipitation.
That's great.
It's funny because I can hear Ryan saying that, and
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
why it's funny. Is because it's just his personality type. That's amazing.
Yeah. So funny. And I remember he brought home a bunch of American candy, and it was like Twinkies and Ding Dongs, and it's like, oh man, that's so funny. So yeah, it was great in the Hamilton ward. I was there with Malloy. We had some great experiences. Trying to think of people maybe we taught or anything like that, but I just remember being a part of the big ward, and that was a neat experience. And Bishop Cameron was so awesome and so, missionary focused and reactivating focused, and really loved his ward. Really cool to see that from a priesthood leader. And so he was a great example. Then after Malloy, Elder Buckner came in. Benjamin Buckner. You guys had him? Talked to him yet?
We will be.
Okay, good.
He's a future one. Yep.
Good. Yeah, I remember when he showed up, and I don't know if you guys remember Buckner, but he was a little stiff until you got to know him. And in Hamilton, there was always like a Saturday soccer game over in Motherwell that we'd always get invited to. And, there's a lot of deep gospel learning going on at that Saturday event. So we made sure we frequented that occasion. And I remember we showed up, and it was Buckner's first time there. And he was like over on the side warming up or doing whatever he was doing. And I was talking to some guys, and I've gotten to know some of these guys a little bit. And one of them looks over at Buckner, and he points him out. And he says, "Oh, all lads, he said something like, we got a Marine or a soldier over here," because he looked like a soldier. Like, he was so stiff about, it's just the way he presented himself was just stiff. And Buckner and I got along really well, traipsing through the Hamilton area. I remember we actually got quite a lot of abuse. Buckner actually got hit with a bottle, I think, twice. Just,
oh my gosh. Yeah,
walking through the park or walking through some of the places we'd walk through, and out of nowhere, this bottle comes flipping in and hits Buckner right on the hip, and then falls to the ground and shatters. And like, we didn't know where it came from. We started looking around, and there was this group of guys over in the, a good distance away. I was surprised that they actually hit him. I was like, "Are you okay?" He's like, "I'm fine," but that was the weirdest thing ever. Like, they didn't even say anything. They just chucked a bottle at us. So there were a couple of those experiences. I don't know what it was about Buckner, but he seemed to invite some sort of reaction to people. I don't know. So funny. But we had a great time in Hamilton. And that was a great area. That's just close to the flat was good. It was close to the train station and things like that, so we could get places quick. And it was kind of my first experience being close to other missionaries. And in fact, I think when I left, they actually made that a multiple companionship area. So I think there were 2 sets of elders in the Hamilton ward or something like that, because the ward was strong and very missionary focused, and it was a good area. Relatively safe, aside from the occasional bottle. So then from Hamilton, I left to Dalkeith with Russell Bass, Elder Bass. And that was another great ward, with a really beautiful building. Maybe it was one of the newer ones, I'm not sure, but they had a great bishop there as well, and I can't remember his name. but he had a good little family. I think he was English actually, which didn't sit well with some folks. But he was really good bishop as well. Very missionary focused. His wife was awesome. I remember she was kind of a, I don't know. She was really good. She's really focused on the gospel and building the ward and fostering unity and making sure the missionaries were in line and things like that, which was good. But she was a neat lady. And yeah, Bass and we got along pretty well. I thought we had a really good time. It was, he was into his music and he had that guitar and he had a really good voice and would sing a lot. Something I wasn't used to, but he was good at it and really enjoyed it. Trying to remember some of the goings on in Dalkeith. It was pretty mellow. I remember we got along just fine, and then he got some sort of news from home. I can't remember what it was, but I remember him we were checking emails, which was right across the street from our flat, which was awesome. The Dalkeith flat. I don't know if you were ever there, but it was above this paint store, and it had this long hallway, which was the only flat I ever had that had a hallway, but it had this long hallway to this big bathroom with a exceptional shower. It was an amazing shower. And all the showers up to that point were pathetic. I mean, I might as well have had a bucket of cold water. But this shower was like a legit shower with pressure and like a shower head.
That's a rare find for sure.
It was a real treat for 3 months. Very memorable, as you can tell.
No, I can agree with you, Adam, because I can think off the top of my head. I have my top 3 showers in my mission too. So, and it obviously corresponds. That flat is much better because of the fact that the shower was legitimate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can argue the fact that it was a good flat if it had a good shower.
Yep.
Yeah, because like the shower in Stranraer was like, it may as well have been a bucket on a nail on the side of the wall. Just so bad. It was maybe warm sometimes. I can't remember, but it was pretty pathetic. And it's not like I was a small guy. Like these showers were teeny tiny. So, and I'm talking to the preacher of the choir here. You guys weren't little guys either. Like some of these showers were a joke, but we managed to stay clean.
That's right.
So anyway, Dalkeith, good flat, good ward. Russell did a lot of good stuff with the ward. People really just kind of gravitated towards it because he was so friendly and pretty unassuming. He didn't have. I don't think he judged people. Like he was just a good guy, and he liked to perform. I remember doing like a talent show with him, and I think we did a musical number. I can't remember what it was, but he got me up there singing with him, which is something I haven't done since and never did before. So he was pretty convincing, I guess. So, yeah, I remember we had a couple baptisms there. One was a lady. That's terrible. I can't remember her name, but she was on like a path to discover religion, and she's very well educated. In fact, I remember learning some things from her about the Bible and about the chronology of the Bible and world history and things like that. She was such an amazing lady to talk to. And she joined the church in Hamilton. And then there was a young lady that was the girlfriend of a member, and her name was I think Nicola, and we baptized her as well. Cool experiences. The Dalkeith Ward was way cool. Good experience there. And then from Dalkeith, I think I remember going to Bathgate with Elder Anderson. And he's one you guys really need to have on here. He was he was a fantastic missionary. He has lots of stories. I'm trying to make sure I got that right. Did I go to Bathgate? Yeah, that's from Bathgate. So Bathgate, I think that's when we were Edinburgh zone leaders. And Anderson was much older than I was, and he'd been his zone leader for a while, so he was showing me the ropes, and I remember just kind of feeling like I was drinking from a fire hose. And he's like, no, you've been out here long enough. You should know these things. He didn't mince words. And so, we were looking after the zone and planning zone things and taking care of those responsibilities and trying to find a balance with working with the ward. And we had sisters that were in the same ward. And they were awesome. I'm trying to think of who they were. Sister Malin and Sister well, there weren't too many sisters. It should be easy. I can't remember. She had dark hair. Anyway, that was fun. That was a fun experience to be in a ward with multiple missionaries and working the ward and working with the members. And I remember we were there during Christmas time, so we were doing things like caroling and things like that. So I was about a year into my mission at that point, and working with members. And I remember going to like a midnight mass sort of thing that year with it was with a member family. They were kind of like a part member, so they, like, half the family agreed to come to our church for our Christmas program, and if the missionaries would go to their church for their Christmas thing. So we did that, and that was an interesting experience, to see another religion during Christmas and how that operated. So that was pretty neat. We started doing that a whole lot more, which was pretty cool. We got to go to some Catholic churches and some of the different Protestant churches that were there. That was a neat experience as well. Just get a flavor for some of the born again churches as well. It was neat to get a different flavor for the religion. I mean, we're all Christian, but it couldn't be more different on some things, which was an interesting perspective. So a lot of fun memories in Bathgate, Livingston area, and I was with Kevin for about, I think, 3 months, and then I got moved to Glasgow City Center, Glasgow zone leader, with Elder Bradley, Jared Bradley, and I think we were together for ever in Glasgow. I think I was it was either 3 months or 4.5 months with Bradley alone, and then Dracacardos after that. But Bradley and I had such a history together because we were together for so long, and we were in that Glasgow area. And I remember we covered the Glasgow ward and the Springboig ward. I think they were a ward at that time. They weren't a branch. And so we'd bounce. We'd go every other Sunday to each one of those wards. And we had quite a good teaching pool, and so it became kind of difficult to balance all that. So they were bringing in more missionaries into Glasgow, which I don't know what the general consensus was, but Glasgow wasn't like a super fun destination, especially Glasgow City Center. So it's not like everyone was like, hey, if I could just serve in Glasgow, like, my mission would be complete. Like, that wasn't anybody's attitude. But they brought Elder Percy, I think it was Elder Percy, and Elder Stratton in, and they bunked with us for a little while, and it was pretty tight quarters. And they were an interesting companionship anyway, because of their nature. But I think we got along okay. But it was tight living quarters, and I remember Bradley getting fed up at some point, and like getting after Stratton and Percy, because I don't necessarily think that they were messier than anybody else, but I think Bradley just hit a boiling point and needed to unload on somebody, and so he unloaded on those two. And I remember watching this thing going, "Oh, Bradley! Holy cow!" Side I hadn't seen of him really, but that was fun. Got after him for their cleanliness, and I remember a couple of transfer nights and things like that where we had a few companionships in that apartment. We had some good times, and had quite a few kebabs too, because that was kind of Bradley's release. It's like, hey, we got to get a kebab tonight. If we had a difficult time, but serving in Glasgow was like, and I think Bradley's first area was like Knightswood, and their apartment I think faced a cemetery, like the Glasgow Cemetery or something like that, and so he spent a lot of time in Glasgow. And I think it's at some point it just got to him. It's like I can't take it anymore. This place is awful. And we've got plenty of fond memories of Glasgow, but we've got some interesting memories as well. We had some great missionaries in the zone. We had some great activities. I remember one. We ended up somewhere. It may have been Dumbarton on the side of a hill. And we were playing. Elder Cottrell was in the zone at the time, as well. And so there was 3 of the 5 of us in that zone that came out together, and we were playing these field games, and it was like capture the flag or something like that. And I remember someone was running down this hill because that was kind of the object of the game, to be the first one down this hill. And I can't remember what elder it was, but he was flying, and eventually caught his foot and did like a couple endos. And I remember Bradley and I just like watching this unfold, thinking, "Oh, we are going to get a phone call about this." Oh my gosh! Well, and the funny thing is, we actually did, but it wasn't for that. So it was Elder Mace. Elder Mace showed up with like a mohawk or something. It was P-Day, and something like story. That. Oh, good. Somebody shared this story. Have you had Mace on?
Yes, we have.
Oh, I got to listen to that one because I got to hear that full story. Because I just remember getting the call from President Rains, and it was, he was like a father figure, and you didn't want to disappoint him. And to get a phone call from him where he was disappointed wasn't fun. But he, basically, elders, how could you let this happen? We're like, yeah, we kind of knew it was bad, but, we didn't really want to, we told him to fix it when he got home. And he's like, well, and Mesa told us he was planning on fixing it anyway. It's just kind of a fun thing to do on a P-Day. Apparently not. Not.
Oh, boy.
Not president approved for sure, which was fine. He was totally right. And you know how Mace was. He'd like to have a good time. So
he was curious who ratted him out. That was the question that Chris posed.
Oh, that's a good question. It might have been us. No, it wasn't us. I feel like Bradley and I felt we had reprimanded him appropriately and thought it would all blow over, but I'm sure there's a rat out there for sure. They need to confess.
Yes,
they need to confess. We need to find out who that was. No, yeah. I just want to know. No hard feelings for sure.
It's probably Stratton. Love you, Craig.
So funny. Yeah, love you, Craig, for sure. I watched Stratton's episode actually, and I thought it was so hilarious. The Bryce, when you called him out about swinging on you, I totally believe it. It's so funny. Yeah.
I have a question about him too for you, Adam. Is it true that he had to have weigh-ins at some point?
Stratton?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Because he was like, we went down. Must have been in our. It was in Edinburgh zone when I was in Edinburgh zone leader. Okay. He was there was like this member. It was either in Ayr or Dumfries, wherever he was, but has kind of mentored him. And yeah, he had like this cabinet full of vitamin supplements. And I was convinced that that's what he was living on, was like vitamin supplements. Because we showed up and he's like, in the morning, Stratton would like get down these bottles and, have this meal of vitamin supplements. And I was like, what the heck is all this stuff? He's like, well, this is for this and this is for that. And, Stratton was a very lean gentleman as it was and athletic as it was. And I just remember, we were kind of sent there on a what would you call it, a recon mission to see what was going on down there. And yeah, because we were worried about him, and he pulled through okay, it seems like. So
yeah,
he made it.
He made it just fine. But yeah, so yeah, Stratton, that was a good time.
I had to ask because Brian Bear told me, he's like, hey, when you talk to Rollo, ask him about weigh-ins for Stratton.
Yeah, because were they companions too?
Yeah, for a long time.
Were, yeah, because Bear was awesome. I love that kid. He was fantastic and did a good job with Stratton. And Stratton was great. Always eager to share his knowledge and understanding. So, yeah, there were a couple interesting situations as his own leader that you just never think about or hear about when you're preparing for a mission. And I remember the other one that was an interesting one was Elder Wilkie and Elder Noble. They were up in Dumbarton together, and I remember Wilkie calling us up saying, "Hey, can you guys come do splits with us?" And that was kind of out of the norm. That was kind of Elder Wilkie's way of saying, "I need some help. Like, I just need somebody else to talk to." And so Bradley and I ran up there that day, and that was a good experience too. I got to spend the day with Noble, who you guys know. He's awesome.
He is awesome.
That was a more memorable day for sure, because I just kind of let him lead the day, and we had a good time. Taught some folks and contacted some people that he'd met before, and that was some street contacting, and met some Jehovah's Witnesses, all people on the street with Elder Noble there, and had a great conversation with those guys, and it was all good. It was fun. The Glasgow zone was always, there was never a dull moment for sure. Being there, and serving with Elder Bradley was great. We had very similar backgrounds, so we got along really well, and just had a kind of a passion for the work, and kind of lost ourselves there for 4.5 months together. And it was a lot of fun. We had some success, and I think we baptized 1 or 2 individuals, which baptisms were rare, so we were happy to experience them. So yeah, I was in Glasgow City Center for 6 months. I was with Elder Dracacardos after he got out of the mission home as an office elder. He seemed like he was in there for a long time.
I think he was.
Yeah, but together, and honestly, no hard feelings with Draco. We just weren't a great companionship. I don't feel like, and we had a good time. I just don't feel like we clicked very well together. I don't know. That's just my recollection. I don't know if he felt that way, but we were only together for a short time. Has he been on yet? I gotta look at these.
Not yet.
No, not yet.
So that was a good experience, and it was the Glasgow ward, the Springboig ward, and there's this Filipino family in the Springboig ward that was awesome. Always they had a son that just returned from a mission, and so he came out with splits with us, and I just remember having some good experiences there and teaching so many cool people. There was a woman, I forget her name, but she had a daughter named Marvelous. She called her Marvel. And they lived in one of these high flats, council housing. They were asylum seekers from the Ivory Coast, And, she'd been investigating the church on and off. Really, it was just kind of someone to talk to. It seemed like she just wanted us to come over so she could talk to us, and we talk and talk and talk and teach her new lessons. And it was right during that the transition to preach my gospel, and so we kind of used that as kind of leverage to say, "Hey, we've got some new lessons to teach you. Can we come over and teach you?" And we do that with people that we've been, in contact with in the past. And she, she'd have us over and she'd feed us every once in a while. And then one day we get a phone call from her, and she's like, absolutely, just kind of in hysterics. She's like, "They found my husband. They found my husband." We're like, "Okay, who found your husband?" Like, we had no idea. Well, so she's like, "Come over, come over, come over." So Bradley and I end up going over there, and his name was Tony. And we met him. He's this mountain of a man from the Ivory Coast. And he's, this super, super Christian individual, very spiritual. And he's basically escaped from political upheaval in the Ivory Coast. He was like a security guard for one of the Ivory Coast rebels or something like that. I don't know the details. And when she left the Ivory Coast, she left with her daughter, and basically wasn't expected to ever see Tony again. And we're lucky enough to get back together. No way to contact each other. It's not like they had cell phones that they could take with them from the Ivory Coast, and you could call her later. But somehow they get reunited. Ended up in like Bishopbriggs in Scotland in this council housing, and their story was incredible. And so we started teaching him, and he was coming along well. And I remember he cooked us some authentic African food for us, and I have no idea what it was. Some of it was rice, for sure, but it was so hot. And I'm not afraid of some spice, but this was unbelievable. In fact, it was killing me as I'm eating this. And Bradley got through it pretty quick, but I remember my belly being on fire. Like, this is hot this stuff was. And as I was taking bites, I was blowing on it. The food itself was actually cold, like physically cold. And so this Tony guy starts laughing at me. He's like, "I think it's cool enough." And Bradley starts laughing too. He's like, "You're blowing on every bite, man. You don't need to blow on it anymore." And so they were laughing at me for that. That's a fond memory, but a cool experience there. Glasgow was a place where you could meet all kinds of people, and we did. We met people from all over the world, and taught people from all over the world. More people that weren't Scottish than were, for sure. Yeah. And where they came from and how they got there and what they were doing now. And there was a guy that we called. His contact in the book was Frank Bing Bong, and I think that was from Elder Grant, Rory Grant, Sweaty Hands Grant.
Oh gosh!
Because he could understand what Frank was saying was for his last name, and so he just wrote down his Bing Bong. So. But he had a great story too. He was also from Africa. He was like a principal for an entire school district or something in Africa. And when he came to Scotland, he was like cleaning toilets, just whatever he could do to provide for his family in the new country. And just wonderful stories and wonderful people that we met in Glasgow. Great times. So then after Glasgow, I ended up training Elder Chance Evans.
Yeah.
And that was an awesome experience too. He was from like Delta, Utah, and experiencing a lot of the same culture shock that I was. And he was a lot of fun to mess with. He's kind of like a little brother because, I was near the end of my mission and he was, just getting started. And, he'd had a kind of a rough upbringing, rougher than mine for sure. And I was teaching about the gospel at the same time as teaching other people the gospel. He was learning like every day, and it was a lot of fun to train him. And I remember, some of my fondest memories were chatting with him because he was just young and kind of bright-eyed and a little kind of new to the gospel, even though he'd kind of grown up into it. But I remember we spent a lot of time near Edinburgh University because we were in Edinburgh City Center, and that was a great place to talk to people and inquiring minds and students and things like that. I remember one day we ended up chapping. We just kind of picked this area, and it was like student housing. And we knock on this door, and this girl pops open the door, and this home is filled with beautiful college age girls, like beautiful. And it's Scotland, so there's probably little cornflakes involved there.
Yes.
But I remember being taken back, like, oh, these are pretty girls, and they're students, they're our age, and I did the door approach or whatever it was, and we started this conversation on the doorstep, and I was like, hey, we'd love to come in and share with you more. And I remember Evans grabs my arm. He's like, we can't go in there. And I was like, why can't we go in there? He's like, they're like pretty girls. It's like, pretty girls need the gospel too. It's okay. Like, we can teach them. Because it was a group of girls, like one-on-one. It's a no-no, but yeah, for sure. It was. And so I think we went and taught a lesson, and he's like, man, I didn't think we could do that. I was like, yeah, the gospel's for everybody. So yeah,
I got excited about your story, Adam, because you're the first person on this podcast that has mentioned the term cornflakes. Which
I'm the first one.
Yes, can you believe that?
Actually,
No, come on.
We're 100 and I think you're 118.
Wow.
118 episodes in, and that you were the first person to say it. That's why I was excited.
That is shocking. Yeah, I thought cornflakes was like a universal.
Yeah,
I remember my trainer taught me what cornflakes was.
Yep.
It was Newcomb. Yeah, I remember him telling me the story. It's like, because we were experiencing it, right? Like, I remember going to the grocery store and I was like, oh yeah, I want this and this. And he's like, yeah, you get the frosted ones now. Sooner or later, you're just gonna revert to the regular cornflakes. It's like, oh, never.
Yeah.
He was 100% right. He was 100% right. Cornflakes were cheaper. Food didn't matter anymore. It's just funny.
Oh man.
So yeah, good old cornflakes.
Oh man, that's so good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Hey, happy to be here in the service.
Oh goodness.
So yeah, I trained Chance for just a few weeks, because then I got pulled into the office with Bradley again, which was a cool experience as well. And then so I was with Bradley for another, maybe it was just 6 weeks, maybe it was a little longer, I can't remember. And then Bradley and I whitewashed out of the office, and Webb and Brownlow came in. And so we got to do a little overlap with those two. And that was an awesome week or 2 weeks, whatever it was. And we were able to go and blitz the mission. And Bradley and I traveled all over Scotland doing exchanges with everybody. And that was my only experience going up further north. So I was able to go to Perth and Dundee and Aberdeen, and Inverness, and so I got to see all that right before I went home, and had some cool experiences as splitting with missionaries. I remember going to Inverness with Colby Hawkins. Is it Hawkins? Yeah.
Yep.
And he was great. He took me over to Loch Ness in between teaching appointments, just so I could see it, and that was fun. And then we spent the day in Inverness, and there's a family there that was awesome, but I went over for this teaching appointment. They told me it was a teaching appointment and there would be dinner. And so they were going to invite these people over. And I remember just thinking, oh, hey, you guys are doing some good work up here in Inverness. Like, this is awesome. And Hawkins and I show up to this dinner appointment, and it was just like a bunch of teenagers hanging out. And I was like, well, interesting. The parents were there too, but it was kind of in and out. They're like, hey, before we do dinner, we want to do this game. And it was like this, I can't remember what the game was, but like, okay, you have to go over here, and they split Colby and I up, and which is kind of we probably should do this, but for the sake of the teaching appointment, we didn't want to, ruffle any feathers because we had some legitimate investigators there. And I don't know how it happened, but I end up in this room with, I think, 2 teenage girls. And I was like, what am I doing? I can't be in here. Like, I'm supposed to be the example. Like, what is Hawkins going to think? Anyway, it was only for like a couple seconds. And they brought me to this dark room, and then they had me do all this weird stuff and touch things. I was like, what are we doing? And it was this game, and I ended up with like black crap on my face or something like that. It was like this big joke. But all the teenagers had a crack, had a laugh at it, and they thought it was great. And then we ended up teaching a lesson, and it was a good experience. But I remember that near the end of my mission, thinking that could have been, that could have gone so the other way and been such a problem. But the Lord watches out for us.
Yep.
When our intentions are pure, right?
Right.
So that was good. It was good to see the rest of Scotland and get up to the Highlands a little bit and spend some time with all the missionaries. I remember those last 2 weeks where we were just, it was just constant missionary work and working with missionaries and working with, we didn't have our own teaching pool, but working with other people's teaching pools and getting to meet more people. It was just an awesome experience that I'm really grateful for. I got to work with President Green's really close, which was an amazing experience as well. What a wonderful guy he was, and wonderful leader. I often look back on his advice and memories that we have working together, and with a lot of fondness. So it was a real treat working with him. And Sister Brings was awesome as well. Working in the office was pretty cool. Because President and Sister Brings would host people. Like, people would come over to Scotland and they'd host them. And one of them was President Hinckley's daughter. She came for a visit. And it was when he was still alive and he was still the prophet. And so, our job was to help serve dinner and clear plates and do dishes and things like that. Well, Sister Brings was hosting, and she was giving us pointers on things to do and not to do and how to behave. And she made it very clear this was a very special treat for us to be able to serve, their guests. And I forget her name, but it was President Hinckley's daughter. And we always just sit with her and hear her tell stories of her dad and growing up with him, and what he was like, and some funny stories. And we kind of got a little backdoor knowledge of the prophet. And she talked about how he was getting older, and how frustrated he was with his body, because he had such a desire to be among the saints and be out doing the work of God. And his body wouldn't allow him to do it, so he'd be doing these exercises and do all kinds of stuff to try and keep things going, and did whatever he could. And it was interesting to hear her perspective on that, being his daughter. And that was a special treat. So there were other guests as well that we got to mingle with, and being close to Edinburgh was a treat too, because we got to see the comings and goings of the mission home, and part of the missionaries coming out and leaving. So that was a cool experience. It was a cool experience for sure.
Great.
Yeah.
Something we always ask, guys from our generation, I guess, about is the transition to preach my gospel. You touched on it a little bit, but
yeah.
Any particular memories with how that was?
I just remember it being like this, hey, something's going to change. Like, get ready. Like, it's changing. And it seemed like, because I remember in our group in the MTC, it was the message of the restoration. It wasn't the the first discussion anymore. So we were supposed to come up with our own outline for teaching the message of the restoration in place of the first discussion. And so we were doing that in the MTC. I remember that. But then once we got out there, it was memorization again and scripture mastery. And there were like some sort of reward for memorizing scriptures and memorizing the discussions and certifications and things like that. And I can't remember what the levels were, but I remember, pursuing that early on in my mission. And then, I think it's about a year into is when Preach My Gospel came out. And I remember it came out and getting a copy and just thinking, wow, having it was just the right thing. Like it just felt so right. And the handbook made such good sense. And, Over the Purple Dragon, I think I still have a copy of that thing. And the tapes, you remember the tapes you'd have to carry around, and the awkward companionship studies. Like I remember sitting with Newcomb doing companionship studies in Srenrar thinking, seriously, this is what we're doing? Like this is how we're learning the gospel? Like, oh man. But luckily, Newcomb was keen on new ideas. So when I showed him like outlines from the MTC, he was like, oh yeah, we can start working this in. We can start doing this. So
nice.
So that worked out really well. It was really awesome transition to be a part of. It was fun to see. It's fun to see the change and the reaction to the Purple Dragon. I know some missionaries burn that thing and use those tapes to make their own music albums and things like that. Recorded over them. Oh man, the things they did to that Purple Dragon, it didn't deserve. But the Preach My Gospel was quite the tool and such an awesome tool to have as a missionary. I was pleasantly surprised. It lived up to the hype. I'll just say that. I remember everybody being like, well, when's this coming out? When's this coming out? There was always questions at zone conferences and things like that. Well, when's it going to happen? And it finally happened. And man, it was awesome. You could tell. I feel like it changed the mood of the mission even. So yeah, it was a special experience for sure.
I agree. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, exciting as it gets for sure.
Yep, that's great. Any other missionaries? Maybe you've talked about a lot, but is there anybody else you want to shout out who we need to get on here?
I saw Fishes, Brendan Fish. Man, that guy's an all-star. Elder Bear, he was an all-star as well. Fantastic. Lots of good memories with them. Conway. Where's Elder Conway? I didn't serve with him.
He's on it.
Oh, good. I got a quick story about Conway.
Yes.
So we're in Edinburgh on splits. He comes over to our flat. It's me and Anderson, but Anderson goes with his companion. I don't know where they were or where they went, but he's with me, and we have a great day together. Conway, he's hilarious. The redhead from Reading. He comes in, and I hadn't met him before, but we hit it off. We had a great time chatting, and we worked the day. By the end of the day, he was spent. I could tell he was just tired, and he was kind of a newer missionary. I remember. I was like, oh, let's call it a day. So we go to sleep, and middle of the night, Conway pops out of bed, grabs him by his shoulder. Elder Rollo, Elder Rollo, Elder Rollo. And I pop out of sleep. I'm like, what is going on? What's going on? Conway, what's going on? He's like, never mind. Climbs back in bed and goes to sleep. What? Conway, are you serious? I'm like, Conway, are you okay? Conway? Guy was sleepwalking. He jumped out of bed, rattled me awake, like in a full panic. Like I still remember, I can still hear the panic in his voice. Like, Elder Rollo, like something terrible is happening. You got to get up. And sure enough, it's just Conway sleepwalking. It's so funny.
Hilarious.
Having been his companion, I can second the fact that he did sleepwalk.
Oh yeah.
There's a couple instances where he got up in the night and just like walked into the living room, and I was like, "Where the heck is he going?" the bathroom's that way. So
Yeah.
love you,
So,
Dan.
Yeah, I love you, Dan. Conway, for sure. I want to hear from him. Bradley, you got to get him on here. Oh, Elder Brown. I ran into Elder Brown the other day.
Yeah,
Zach Brown.
we'd love to have Zach on.
Yeah, he's got to get on here. Small world. I don't know. Maybe it was fate, but it was like right after I flaked on you the last time. He shows up at my office, like walks past. And I'm like, that looks like Zach Brown. That looks like Elder Brown. And he does a double take as well. And we lock eyes. And I get out of my chair, and he turns around in the hallway, and he was talking to my sales manager, and I'm like, Zach Brown? He's like, yeah. He's like, how do I know you? I was like, oh, from Scotland. He's like, no, from Scotland? I was like, it's Elder Rollo. He's like, man, you look exactly the same. I was like, you do too. Like, this is crazy. So it was really, really small world. Just having to show up like that when all this was going on. And he's like, hey, I'll come back in a minute. So he finishes up with the sales manager, and he was probably in my office for an hour. We were just chatting about some of his experiences in Scotland. And
awesome.
He's like, have you heard about the podcast? I was like, yeah, I've heard about the podcast. I'm supposed to be on it. He's like, yeah, I've watched a couple of them. He's like, I don't know if I'm going to do it. I was like, Zach, you got to do it, man. He's like, I don't know if they want to hear some of the things I have to say.
We do, actually.
I said, Zach, it doesn't matter. And he had me rolling and blushing a little bit too, actually, in the office.
That's the stuff we want to hear. Come on.
Yeah.
This is like a no holds barred area.
Yeah.
Like
share
the juicy stuff. Yes,
we've talked about 20 years is the perfect time because you're past the statute of limitations, but you still remember what actually happened. So
yeah. That's right. Yeah, it's a good timing for sure. So yeah, Elder Fish, is it Darren Fish? I think is his name.
Devin Fisher.
Devin Fisher, that's the one. Not Brennan Fish. Darren Fisher. Devin Fisher.
He's in my group, and I've been working on him, so we'll get him.
Yeah, he's got to come out. He was. I ran into him a few times after the mission, which was fun.
He lives in your neck of the woods, so that makes sense.
Yeah, he was living in Davis County.
Yeah.
I used to run into him at Lowe's all the time. He was working there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So.
For the discount, I'm sure.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, getting through college. Trying to think of some of the other missionaries. Newcomb, love to hear from Newcomb. Anderson as well. I don't know if you guys been in contact with Kevin, but he had a major impact on me, probably for my entire life going forward. Just he had a great way of holding people accountable, but showing love. We had some great experiences in Livingston that, a little too sacred to share on this format, but great experience with Kevin Anderson. And like you said, Zach, I don't care what kind of position they are in life. Just want to hear from them, hear that they're doing okay.
Yeah, agreed. This is a check-in of we wanted to let people know that we love them. It doesn't matter how long it's been. This is an opportunity to show how much we love each other.
Yeah, for sure. Newman as well. I'd love to hear from Newman. We had a great experience too. Trying to think of anybody else that we were close to. Elder Cottrell.
Yeah,
he was great.
It's a good list for sure. We've heard those names several times. So, any of you guys listening, come on.
Yeah,
reach out to us.
It's a good time for sure.
And we'll give you the assignment, Adam, that if you haven't been in touch with him in a while, it's time to resurrect the old phone book and give him a call or reach out to him and then just say, hey, I was on this podcast. You should do it too. And
I'd love to hear from you.
We love referrals.
Yeah. You guys have a great format here. This thing's awesome. I got a promotion back in August or something like that, and things got really tough. And that's about the same time I found the podcast. And it got me through some hard times at the office, man. It was awesome. So it was cool. Just like the timing of the podcast coming out and some of the guys that were on there, really kind of fanned my flame a little bit. So it was great. It's great. I'm glad you guys are doing this.
That's awesome. We're glad to hear that.
Yeah, definitely.
So keep it up. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We certainly will. We've got a list to work through, and
Yeah.
just it takes one conversation at a time, but we're getting there. It's been fun.
It's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, President and Sister Brains. I don't know if you've heard from them for a while, but
Not since we recorded their episode, really.
Yeah.
Such wonderful experiences with those two. I was able to interact with them a little bit after the mission too. I'd see them a lot at like jazz games, and for a while it was great because it was just like, oh, Elder Rollo, like this is so great to see you here. And then it became, President Brains started losing his cognitive functions, and I'd see him at a jazz game. I'd be like, hey, President Brains, and he'd be like, remind me your name, like so sweet. I knew he couldn't remember me for the life of him, and I didn't really expect him to because there were so many missionaries, right? But for a while there, it was great, and kind of see his cognitive decline. But I remember one experience in particular. I was at a Utes game, walking into the stadium, football stadium, and him and Sister Greens happened to be pulling into the parking lot, and recognized Sister Vreens anywhere. So I saw her through the passenger side. I knew President Vreens was on the other side. So I ran up and I started banging on the window. And Sister Vreens, startled, but looks over and, her famous, oh, she rolls the window down, and she was so excited to see me, hugs me through the window, like reaches out with her long arms and brings me in close. And the look on President Green's face, though, I thought he was going to murder me. And I don't know if it's just because he didn't recognize me or what it was, or the situation. Like, why are you banging on my window? I was so excited to see him. So it's funny. It was one of those faces like, Elder, what do you think you're doing? Like, quiet dignity, Elder.
The thought he had was, why is my wife hugging this handsome man?
Sure, that's what it was. But yeah, she was so sweet, and I hope they're doing great. They had such a wonderful impact on so many missionaries. I hope they understand just what they did, what they accomplished while they were there, because it was pretty special when you think back and look at all these missionaries that went through there, and the generations of impact they're going to have on these people's lives. Pretty cool.
Yeah, we have talked to their kids a little bit, and we know that these recordings, and we always ask about experiences with mission presidents and their wives, and so this is becoming a record for them too of those experiences and things.
Good.
The impact that they had on all of us. So
yeah,
it is good.
Yeah, it was 3 years well spent for them, for sure. If there was any doubt. It was awesome.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Adam. We really appreciate your time. We're glad we made it happen finally.
Thank you. Thanks for your patience, guys. It was much appreciated. Glad to be on.
Worth the wait, I have to say.
We will always be patient for the Adam Rollo. The Adam Rollo.
Yeah.
Well,
hey, thanks, guys.
We'll say goodnight to your brother. We love you.
Love you too. Hey, appreciate it. Keep it up.
Cheerio, brother.
Cheerio.
Bye.